Hey, Byte Wellness family. Hope your weekend is starting out well. So far, this Saturday is looking pretty good on a number of fronts. We're trying something new this week. Gonna give you guys a weekly summary during over video. Let me know how you feel about that. Just hit me back with a text message to let me know if this was helpful at all. Gonna elaborate today just a little bit. Um, it's November. Election was just called. It's also soup time. So, in the US, when November hits, I mean, most of us are feeling enough of a chill to start, craving warm stews or soups. Um, and this is a really great opportunity to take control over what is, usually a comfort food, and make it more healthful and more helpful. So we think about soups and stews, especially during cold weather season, as being great sources of immune support. But it's not just the immune system that can benefit from, strategic placement of like whole foods and other sources of nutrition in our soups. If you're strategic about how you eat your soup and your stew, and where you get it, uh, your cardiovascular system, your heart, your blood vessels also benefit. So, what exactly am I talking about? Blood pressure, guys, blood pressure. Um, we think about soup and stew as like really great for health, but we've been talking about ultra processed foods for the last few weeks now, and the last couple messages focused on how certain types of soups, like powdered soup, can be considered an ultra processed food, where it's actually more of a factory product than it is an actual real food that humans should consume. We also, just a couple days ago, talked about how canned soup has pretty high levels of sodium or table salt, um, just at baseline. And so you should generally look for the lower sodium labels on soup just to make sure that you're not getting just loads and loads of this salt, which can have a negative impact on blood pressure, and in some cases on congestive heart failure as well. So, generally, the American Heart Association recommends that we all just sort of watch out for the amount of sodium we get. With ultra processed foods, again, we've like beaten this dead horse for the last few weeks, but with ultra processed foods, you end up getting salt along with sugar and starch and fat kind of hiding in prepared foods that you wouldn't otherwise suspect as being really major sources of salt. So there's a reason, good reason, for the American Heart Association to make these recommendations, and specifically, what they recommend is that Americans eat no more than 2,300 milligrams. That's 2,300 milligrams or 2.3 grams of sodium every day. That's kind of a big deal because, one Campbell's chicken noodle soup container, like condensed, like can of condensed soup, um, can contain more than that, more than the 2,300 milligrams that we're limited to every day. And I bet a bunch of us probably walk by that chicken noodle soup can and feel empowered, feel like this is a great option, right? You can throw in a bunch of veggies, herbs, whatever, and use it as a base for what you expect to be this very nutritious soup or stew. But in fact, you're bringing on a bunch of sodium. So, what is the problem with eating too much sodium or too much salt? Um, Let me tell you about this one study, and I'm going to link to it in the video comments. So if you're interested in looking at this study for yourself, just go ahead and actually follow the Vimeo link, the video link to Vimeo, and then look in the comments and you'll see the citation and the link to this study. But basically, in 2017, there was this large study that had a surprisingly large Black American population. Like we were overrepresented. Black folks were about 57% of this study population, which is very rare. So this 2017 study looked at how people's diets, the quality of the diet, and then the content of sodium, the amount of salt in the diet, affected their blood pressure. And what they did is they had half of the study population on this DASH diet, which is basically a more wholesome eating pattern. It consists of whole grains and, fresh fruits and veggies and limited animal products, limited meat and dairy. Um, they put half the study population on that DASH diet, and then they put the other half of the study population on a control diet, which is basically just the standard American diet. Um, and you know what that looks like. Lots of processed foods, not nearly as many fresh fruits and veggies. So then within each of those categories, they cycled people through three levels of sodium intake. So there was the lowest level, which was right around like 1,200 milligrams of sodium a day. And then the highest level, which was about 3,600 milligrams of sodium every day. Um, and then there was the middle ground. And so what they found is that comparing people who were in the DASH diet, the more wholesome diet, comparing them at the lowest level of sodium, this 1,200 milligrams a day, um, and this comparison was made amongst folks with high blood pressure. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. Only people with high blood pressure were in this trial. Folks with high blood pressure who weren't on medications. So you get them on this healthier diet, the more wholesome DASH diet with the lowest amount of sodium, and then you compare their blood pressure uh, to the people who were on the standard American diet with more processed foods and who were eating the highest levels of sodium. And what they found was that there was as much as a 20-point difference between the folks in these two groups between their systolic blood pressures. Systolic blood pressure, you remember, is the top number, whereas blood pressure gives you top number and that line, and then the bottom number, systolic, is the top number. Um, and 20 points is an incredible change, right? 20 points is really significant. So this isn't a change that we saw in an individual specifically, but this is a randomized trial. So we're comparing people in these two different categories. Amazing to think that making this change in diet for just 4 weeks could make that much of a difference in your blood pressure levels. What they also found is that in each of those diet categories, each individual, um, on average, there was a change in blood pressure. There was a reduction in blood pressure as people went from the higher levels of sodium to the mid and then to the lower levels of sodium in each of these categories. So there is an impact on, with eating a low sodium diet. Um, Even when you're eating just standard American highly processed food, there's also an impact when you're eating a healthier diet. There's a benefit, blood pressure benefit to eating lower sodium, even when you're eating this healthier diet. So let's talk about some ways to avoid eating too much sodium as we stock up on those soups and stews. So, I mean, we talked about this at the beginning of the video. Choose low sodium options. Look for that low sodium label on your canned soup, on like canned vegetables, if you're going to be adding those to your soup, and even on broth, if you're buying broth at the store to use as a base for your soup. Think about, the amount of salt that you're actually adding to your food. If you're going to make the soup or stew at home, um, add other herbs and spices first. So we talked about our power four spices, which are really anti-inflammatory, and just have broad health benefits. Those power four spices, you remember, um, garlic, onions, turmeric, and uh, spicy peppers. So you can add those. You can add, herbs like parsley, basil, sage, thyme. These can be dry, these can be fresh. You get a significant plant magic or polyphenol benefit regardless. You add all this to the soup first and leave the salt as the last seasoning, right? So you'll know after you've added all these other spices and herbs whether or not you even need salt, and you'll probably find that you don't need nearly as much as you thought you would. All right. Um, any questions? Feel free to hit me over text. Uh, you guys are part of the Byte Wellness Daily Text crew, so you've already got my number. For folks seeing this who aren't part of the crew, if you text me at 224 302 6224, send me whatever text, but if you hit me with text me, I'll be able to add you to the crew so you get these daily text reminders. Um, if you like this, let me know and we'll keep doing it as a weekly update. Okay, take care, guys.